You think Hollywood's golden age was all glitz and glamour? Think again. Behind the sparkling gowns and million-dollar smiles was a brutal, silent system that demanded everything from young women. Except respect. And if you dared say no, your career could vanish overnight. These 15 legendary actresses didn't just battle for screen time. They fought to keep their dignity intact. Some of them paid the price with obscurity, while others endured years of retaliation. And wait till you hear what Marilyn Monroe really thought of Tinseltown. Morino Hara was the fiery redhead who lit up classics like Miracle on 34th Street and The Quiet Man. But off-screen, she had zero tolerance for being manhandled. At just 25, she nearly walked away from it all after dodging relentless come-ons from producers and directors. For standing her ground, she was labeled frigid, even had her femininity questioned. They called her a cold potato, simply because she wouldn't let them grope her. But she never backed down. I wouldn't throw myself on the casting couch, and I know it cost me roles, she admitted decades later. Her strength cost her work, but not her soul. Shirley Temple was America's sweetheart, but even that didn't protect her. At just 12, she was meeting a top MGM producer when the unthinkable happened. He exposed himself to her during what was supposed to be a professional meeting. She nervously laughed, and he tossed her out for not playing along. Her contract was quietly dropped, and her time as a child star faded soon after. Shirley never forgot how Hollywood shattered her innocence long before adulthood even began. Joan Collins could have been Cleopatra. No, literally. She was the frontrunner for the iconic role. But when the head of 20th Century Fox told her she'd need to be nice, a euphemism she understood all too well, she burst into tears and ran from the room. The role went to someone else. Later, Joan admitted how Marilyn Monroe had warned her. The wolves are everywhere, and they don't take no for an answer. Judy Garland seemed to have it all. Stardom, talent, and a voice that could melt hearts. But from the time she was 16, she was being touched and harassed by MGM's most powerful execs. Louis B. Mayer, who acted like her protector, was among the worst offenders. He'd praise her talent while inappropriately touching her, and Judy felt she couldn't protest. They even fed her pills to control her weight and energy. When she finally did confront Mayer as an adult, he was furious. Soon after, she was let go by MGM, officially for unreliability, but insiders knew the real reason. Rita Hayworth was dubbed the Love Goddess, but behind her sultry image was a woman constantly fending off the advances of studio boss Harry Cohn. Early on, her then-husband, described by Orson Welles as a literal pimp, arranged a private meeting between her and Cohn, who expected something in return. She said no. From that moment, Cohn made her life miserable. He fined her for defying him and tried to control every aspect of her image. Even superstardom couldn't protect her from retaliation. Kim Novak was carefully molded into Columbia Pictures' next big thing. But she didn't blindly obey. She pushed back on image changes and, more importantly, refused Harry Cohn's advances. When she began dating Sammy Davis Jr., Cohn lost it. He saw it as a betrayal and even sent goons to intimidate Davis. Novak lived under surveillance and pressure, yet still managed to star in Vertigo. But the stress ultimately pushed her to step away while still in her prime. Ginger Rogers danced into America's hearts with Fred Astaire, but she too had to dodge Hollywood's predators. At one meeting, studio boss Cohn chased her around his desk, propositioning her. She ran, saying, "I don't want to discuss this," and left the studio. That bold exit meant she had to find work elsewhere, but she never forgot that moment, and years later, confirmed it publicly. Her silent courage was shared by many actresses of her era who had to quietly choose between dignity and a paycheck. Rita Moreno entered Hollywood young and hopeful, and immediately got a reality check. At 19, she turned down producer Buddy Adler's advances and was rewarded with typecast roles and a contract that ended just as she started to gain traction. Only years later did she find success with West Side Story. after leaving the studio system behind. As one of the few Latinas in the business, her bravery in saying no came at a much higher cost. Linda Darnell was a rising star, until she rejected studio mogul Darryl F. Zanuck's persistent advances. He retaliated by sidelining her, giving her roles in mediocre films, and even suspending her career for not cooperating. When she married someone he didn't approve of, he lost interest in promoting her altogether. By her late 20s, she was no longer a leading lady, not because of age or talent, but because she said no to the wrong man. Tippi Hedren, the elegant star of The Birds, found herself caught in Alfred Hitchcock's web, and not in the fun, cinematic way. What started as a mentorship turned into a nightmare of obsession, harassment, and career sabotage. She rejected his physical advances, and he responded by keeping her under contract but refusing to let her work. For over 2 years, she was paid to do nothing. It was his twisted revenge. She spoke out years later, exposing one of Hollywood's darkest secrets. Jean Arthur had one of the most charming voices in film, but her experience with Harry Cohn made her contemplate something drastic. After enduring him sneaking into dressing rooms and making aggressive advances, she brought a gun to the studio out of fear. Instead of using it, she left the business entirely at 45, walking away from fame, money, and a career she loved. For her, escaping was the only way to feel safe. Louise Brooks was ahead of her time. A 1920s silent film star, she was one of the first women to call out Hollywood's "you sleep, you succeed" culture. She wrote about it, talked about it, and refused to play the game, even if it meant being blacklisted. And she was. Her refusal to cooperate led to a vanishing act from the big studios, and though she found some success in Europe, her outspokenness made her an early martyr in the fight for dignity. Senta Berger thought the 1960s would be different. They weren't. In 1965, she met with Zanuck in a hotel, and he exposed himself to her while wearing a silk robe. He even made a disgusting remark about forgiving her for Nazi crimes, if she slept with him. Senta fled and never looked back. She left Hollywood, continued her career in Europe, and stayed far away from the cesspool she had narrowly escaped. Marilyn Monroe, the ultimate Hollywood icon, saw through the fantasy early on. She once called the industry an overcrowded brothel and was open about the pressure to trade sex for roles. She walked out of more than a few inappropriate meetings and even admitted to friends that she often felt her refusal to play along hurt her career. She didn't care. "If you didn't go along," she once said, "there were 25 girls who would." She wanted to be famous, but not if it meant losing herself. So, next time you watch an old classic and admire the grace and power of its leading lady, remember, many of them were fighting battles you never saw. These women didn't just act, they resisted. They protected their bodies, their spirits, and their futures in an industry that punished them for saying no. If you found this powerful or eye-opening, share it with someone who needs to know the real stories behind the silver screen. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe, because truth deserves the spotlight.